Why was the smallest person on the base always standing in the exact spots a sniper would choose? That's what Corporal Danny Walsh kept wondering. Mia Torres, 54, barely 115 pounds soaked through, always clutching that heavy camera like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Everyone at Forward Operating Base Cobra knew her as the war correspondent, the quiet one, the one who pressed herself into corners when the shelling started, the one who smiled politely when the loadmaster laughed at her oversized pack, the civilian, the liability. But Walsh noticed things other people didn't. He noticed how she positioned herself near the northern barrier. Perfect sightlines, elevation advantage, cover from 3 directions. He noticed how she'd stand motionless for long moments, body perfectly still, eyes tracking something in the distance. Not like someone framing a photograph, like someone calculating windage and range. The CH-47 Chinook had descended through clouds of dust 3 weeks earlier, rotors thrashing against the desert air. Mia had gripped the webbing along the fuselage wall, her camera bag pressed tight against her chest. 26 years old, a woman in a war zone full of men who measured strength in muscle mass and gunfire. Captain Vincent Holt had been the first to greet her at the landing zone. 38 years old, weathered face. The kind of man who'd seen too many deployments to be impressed by much anymore. His handshake had been firm but measuring. "Welcome to Cobra," he'd said. "We'll try to keep things boring for you." "I'm here to document reality, Captain," she'd replied. "Boring would be fine." But nothing about Mia Torres was boring, not if you knew what to look for. Over the first week, she moved through Firebase Cobra like a ghost. She photographed soldiers cleaning weapons, standing watch on the perimeter, eating MREs in the shade of their vehicles. The Rangers tolerated her presence. Some grumbled about having a civilian embedded with them. A woman, no less. Someone they'd have to protect if things went sideways. No one thought she might be the one protecting them. One night Captain Holt walked past her tent. Light bled through the canvas. He paused. Through the gap he could see Mia cleaning her camera lens, but the movements were wrong. Too methodical, too practiced. Her fingers moved in the exact sequence someone would use to field strip and clean a precision rifle. He cleared his throat. Mia's head snapped up. For just a moment, Holt saw something cold and sharp in her eyes, something predatory. Then it vanished, replaced by the same mild expression she always wore. "Just maintaining my equipment," she said. "Dust gets into everything out here." "Right," Holt studied her in the dim light. "You former military, Miss Torres." "I've been around bases my whole life. Father was Army. Guess I picked up habits." It was a non-answer, but Holt let it drop. That night he wrote in his duty log, "Embedded Correspondent Tours. Recommend background verification. Training indicators suggest prior service." He had no idea how right he was, or how much that verification would never reveal. Some files were buried so deep they might as well not exist. Some units were so classified that even their disbandment was a secret. Mia lay in her tent that night staring at the canvas ceiling. She could hear the generators humming, the distant sound of someone laughing, the click of weapons being cleaned. Familiar sounds, comforting sounds. Sounds she'd told herself she'd never miss. Her hand moved to the small compartment in her camera bag. Hidden beneath the lens filters and memory cards was a faded cloth patch. She didn't need to look at it. She knew every detail. A hawk diving toward prey, talons extended. Falcon 7. 3 years as a designated marksman, then primary sniper, 87 confirmed eliminations. She'd been one of the best, fast, precise, unshakable. Until she wasn't. Until Marcus. She closed her eyes, but the memory came anyway. It always did. Kandahar, the rooftop. Marcus beside her calling out wind speed and distance. The target in her scope. A man, just a man. Except intelligence said he was an arms dealer, a bomb maker, responsible for the deaths of 47 civilians. She'd hesitated, 3 seconds, maybe 4, long enough for the target to move, long enough for Marcus to lean forward trying to get a better angle on the laser rangefinder, long enough for the counter-sniper's bullet to find him instead of her. She'd pulled the trigger then, too late. The target had gone down, so had Marcus. And Mia had learned that hesitation in war doesn't cost you your life. It costs you the lives of the people you love. Falcon 7 was disbanded 2 months later. Officially, it was restructuring. Unofficially, everyone knew it was because their primary sniper had frozen. Because Marcus Rodriguez had died and Mia Torres had survived. And sometimes the world didn't forgive that kind of math. She'd left the service, became a reporter, told herself she'd never look through a scope again, that she'd document war instead of contributing to it, that she could turn it off. But you can't turn off years of training. You can't stop seeing the world in terms of threat assessment and firing solutions. You can't stop your heart from racing when you hear a certain pitch of engine noise or see movement on a distant rooftop. You can only pretend you're someone else and hope no one looks too closely. The patrol into the village of Al-Rashid came 3 days later. Intelligence reported civilian displacement, possible humanitarian crisis. Ranger Team 412 rolled out in 3 MRAPs. Mia rode in the second vehicle with Sergeant Kyle Patterson's fire team. The village was devastation, collapsed walls, burned-out vehicles, craters in the road where IEDs had detonated, families huddled in doorways, children with hollow eyes watching the American soldiers pass. Mia worked quickly, capturing images of the destruction, the faces of the displaced, a woman carrying a child through the rubble, an old man sitting in what used to be his home. But Patterson noticed she never flinched at the sound of distant gunfire, never hunched her shoulders when a helicopter passed low overhead. "You're awfully comfortable in a war zone," he said. Mia lowered her camera. "I've been to 4 different conflicts. You get used to it." "Most people don't get used to this." She didn't answer, just raised her camera again. But she'd lied. You never got used to it. You just got better at hiding how much it still affected you. Better at pretending the screams of children didn't sound like the screams you heard in your nightmares. Better at acting like the smell of burned flesh didn't make you want to vomit. Patterson was crossing an alley when Mia saw it. The glint, just a fraction of a second, sunlight hitting metal, 200 meters away, rooftop, 11 o'clock. Her camera hit the ground. She was moving before her conscious mind caught up. She tackled Patterson, driving him into the dirt. The burst of AK fire ripped through the space where he'd been standing. "Sniper," Mia yelled. "Rooftop, 200 meters, 11 o'clock. The Rangers took cover, scanning, searching. It took Walsh 15 seconds to spot the shooter, a lone gunman on a minaret nearly invisible against the stone. "How did you see him?" Walsh asked, his voice tight with adrenaline. Mia was breathing hard, her face pale. The sun hit his barrel, just a reflection. But Holt, kneeling behind the MRAP, knew better. That reflection would have lasted a fraction of a second. You didn't spot something like that unless you knew exactly what to look for. Unless you'd spent hundreds of hours scanning rooftops for threats. Unless you'd been trained to hunt other snipers. That night back at Cobra, Holt pulled Mia aside. The sun was setting, the sky bleeding red and orange. "Where did you serve?" "I don't." "Miss Torres." His voice was quiet but firm. "I've been doing this for 16 years. I know what training looks like. You spotted a target our designated marksman missed. You moved like someone with CQB experience, so I'll ask again. Where did you serve?" Mia met his eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. The desert wind picked up, carrying dust and the smell of fuel. Somewhere in the distance someone was singing, badly, off-key, human sounds in an inhuman place. Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out the faded cloth patch. Holt's breath caught. He recognized it instantly. "Falcon 7, he whispered. Mia nodded slowly. 3 years designated marksman, then primary sniper, 87 confirmed eliminations. Falcon 7 was disbanded 2 years ago, after he stopped himself. After the Kandahar incident, Mia's voice was flat, empty. After I hesitated, after my spotter died because I couldn't pull the trigger fast enough. Holt said nothing. What could he say? He'd heard the stories. The legendary sniper team that had been shut down after a mission went wrong. He'd never known the details, never known it was a woman, never known she was still out here, still fighting her own war. I left the service, Mia continued. Became a reporter so I'd never have to look through a scope again, so I could document war instead of contributing to it. But you still see it, Holt said. Still calculate angles, wind, distance, every minute of every day. She took the patch back, folding it carefully. I can't turn it off, but I don't have to act on it. What if you have to? Mia looked away, toward the perimeter where the setting sun painted shadows across the desert. Then I hope I don't hesitate again. What happens when the one mission you try to avoid becomes the one mission you can't escape? The briefing came down from battalion headquarters on a Tuesday morning. Ranger Team 412 would escort a convoy of humanitarian supplies through Dustfall Valley, a narrow pass between two ridgelines, known for ambushes, known for IED attacks, known for being a death trap. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stared at the topographic map, her jaw tight. This is a bad idea. We'll be boxed in, no room to maneuver, no air support if the weather turns. Command wants those supplies delivered, Holt replied. The village on the far side has been cut off for 3 weeks. People are dying. Chen jabbed a finger at the map. And we'll be dying right here if they hit us in the valley. Mia had been standing quietly in the corner, invisible, the way she'd learned to be, but Holt looked at her anyway. You're staying on base for this one. No. Everyone turned. Mia stepped forward into the light. This is exactly the kind of mission I need to document. Humanitarian aid reaching desperate civilians. It's too dangerous. Captain, I've been in firefights before. I can handle myself. Walsh spoke up. Sir, with all due respect, she's proved she's not a liability. And if something goes wrong, he paused. Having someone with her skills might be useful. Holt grimaced. He didn't like it, but Walsh had a point. Fine, but you stay in the command vehicle with me. No heroics. The convoy rolled out at dawn. 4 MRAPs and 2 supply trucks moving slowly through the desert toward the valley. Mia sat in the command vehicle, her camera in her hands, her stomach churning with a feeling she recognized but didn't want to name. Dread. The valley loomed ahead, rocky walls rising on both sides, the road narrowing to barely 2 vehicles wide. Every instinct Mia had screamed at her to turn around. This was wrong. This was a kill box. This was exactly the kind of terrain she would have chosen if she'd been planning an ambush. She keyed her radio. Captain, the high ground on both sides. I know, Holt cut her off. We don't have a choice, just stay alert. They entered the valley, the walls closed in, shadows deepened. Mia's eyes tracked the ridgelines, left, right, back again, looking for movement, for the telltale shape of a weapon, for anything that didn't belong. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then the world exploded. The lead MRAP vanished in a fireball, IED, massive. The shockwave hit Mia's vehicle like a physical blow. Before the echo faded, gunfire erupted from both ridgelines. Dozens of muzzle flashes, hundreds of rounds tearing through the convoy. Ambush, someone screamed. Ambush, ambush. Holt was on the radio calling for air support, for QRF, for anything. But Mia barely heard him. She was already moving, out of the vehicle, into the chaos, her camera forgotten. A ranger stumbled past her, blood pouring from his neck. Mia caught him, dragged him behind the MRAP, applied pressure. He was young, maybe 20. His eyes were wide and terrified. You're okay, she lied. "You're okay." But he wasn't. She knew it. He knew it. And there was nothing she could do except hold him while he died. The gunfire was relentless. The Rangers were pinned down, outgunned, outnumbered. Mia could see it happening, could see how it would end. They'd be overrun in minutes. Then she heard it, the sound that made her blood go cold. Helicopter rotors. Not American, wrong pitch, wrong rhythm. She looked up. 2 Mi-24 Hinds coming over the western ridge. Russian-made attack helicopters. Gunships, armed with 30 cannons and rocket pods. Whoever was hitting them hadn't just planned an ambush. They'd planned a slaughter. The first Hind opened fire. The 30 rounds tore through the supply trucks, shredding metal and wood and cardboard. Supplies scattered across the valley. Food, medicine, blankets, all of it burning. Chen was screaming into her radio. "Where's our air support? Where's our goddamn air support?" Static, nothing but static. Holt grabbed Mia's shoulder. "We need to fall back, regroup, get to cover." But Mia wasn't looking at him. She was looking up, at the ridgeline, at a position 400 meters away where a lone figure had just appeared. He was carrying something long and dark, a rifle, a sniper rifle. And she recognized him. Not his face. She couldn't see his face from this distance, but his stance, his movements, the way he settled into position. Viper. Alexei Volkov, Russian mercenary, former Spetsnaz, one of the deadliest snipers in the world. She'd studied his file during her Falcon 7 days, watched recordings of his confirmed kills. He was methodical, patient, and he never missed twice. He was lining up a shot on Holt. Mia didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't freeze. She grabbed the DMR rifle from a dead ranger's hands and sprinted for the slope. "Tors," Holt yelled, "get back here." But she was already climbing, boots slipping on loose rock, lungs burning, heart pounding, the rifle heavy in her hands. Behind her, the battle raged. Ahead of her, somewhere in the rocks, was a man who would kill everyone she'd come to care about if she didn't stop him. It took her 4 minutes to reach a suitable position. A rocky outcrop 350 meters above the valley floor. She dropped to her stomach, set up the rifle. Her hands moved automatically. Check the magazine, clear the chamber, adjust the scope, breathe. Through the scope she could see everything. The valley, the burning vehicles, the Rangers fighting for their lives, the Hinds circling like vultures. And Viper, 600 meters away, across the valley, already firing. Mia watched through her scope as his first shot hit Sergeant Patterson in the chest. He went down, didn't move again. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled. All the training came flooding back. Wind speed, distance, elevation, Coriolis effect. 1,000 variables calculated in seconds. She had 11 rounds in the magazine. She exhaled, squeezed the trigger. Shot 1. The bullet crossed 600 meters of empty air and punched through an enemy fighter's chest just as he was lining up a rocket launcher. He fell backward. The rocket fired wild, exploding against the cliff face. Shot 2. Another fighter, this one on the eastern ridge. He'd been about to throw a grenade into a cluster of Rangers. The round caught him in the throat. He dropped the grenade. It exploded at his feet, taking 3 more enemies with him. Mia didn't feel anything, didn't think about the men she was killing, didn't think about Marcus, didn't think about Kandahar. There was only the scope, the trigger, the target. This was what she was, what she'd always been. A weapon. Shot 3, shot 4, shot 5. Each one found its mark. Each one dropped an enemy fighter. Below, the Rangers rallied, started fighting back. They didn't understand what was happening. Didn't know why the enemy was suddenly falling. Didn't know that above them, a ghost they thought was just a reporter was picking their attackers off one by one. But Viper knew. She saw him adjust his position, saw him scanning, looking for her. Their eyes met through their respective scopes, 600 meters apart, 2 snipers, 2 hunters. both knowing that only one would walk away. He fired first. The bullet passed so close to Mia's head that she felt the heat, heard the crack. She rolled, came up, returned fire. Shot 6, Miss Viper had already moved. Shot 7, she caught him in the shoulder as he dove for cover, not lethal, but he'd felt it. 4 rounds left. The hinds were still circling. One of them banked hard, coming around for another pass. The pilot had spotted her. The gunship's nose dipped. The 30 cannon swiveled in her direction. Mia calculated distance, speed, angle of attack. She had maybe 3 seconds before that cannon turned her into a red mist. She swung the rifle, led the target, exhaled. Shot 8, shot 9, shot 10. The first 2 rounds punched through the cockpit canopy. The third hit something vital in the engine compartment. Black smoke poured from the turbine. The helicopter lurched, lost altitude, and barely managed to limp behind the western ridge. The second hind broke off, retreating. 3 rounds left. Down in the valley, the enemy forces were overrunning the Rangers' position. Holt was firing his sidearm. Chen was down. Walsh was bleeding from a head wound. But Mia couldn't help them yet. Not while Viper was still out there. Not while the deadliest threat was still waiting for the perfect shot. She turned her scope back to his last position. He was gone. Her heart hammered. Where was he? Then she saw it. Movement. 700 meters now, he'd repositioned, gotten closer. He was settling into a new hide behind a boulder, nearly invisible. Mia tracked him, waited, patience. That's what her instructors had taught her. That's what separated good snipers from dead ones. Seconds stretched into minutes. Below, the Rangers' fire was getting sporadic. They were almost out of ammunition. Then she saw it, the tiniest reflection, the tip of Viper's barrel extending just an inch past the boulder as he adjusted his aim. Mia had one chance, one shot. She aimed at the boulder itself, at the thinnest section where sandstone met granite, at a point where the rock had been weathered by 1,000 years of wind and rain. She fired her 11th round. The bullet punched through the weakened stone and kept going. Through her scope, she saw Viper jerk backward, then slump forward. Empty rifle, no ammunition, and the enemy ground forces still advancing. Mia grabbed the radio. "Captain, I'm coming down." "We don't have 60 seconds, Holt's voice came back, ragged and desperate. "Then make time." She didn't climb down, she jumped. "How much of yourself can you destroy before you save someone else?" Mia hit the slope hard, rolling, sliding, barely controlling her descent. Rocks tore at her uniform, cut her face, her hands. 30 meters down, she crashed into a pile of stones that stopped her momentum. Pain shot through her ribs. Broken, probably, but she forced herself up. She grabbed an AK-47 from a dead enemy fighter and ran toward the Rangers' position. Her training screamed at her to stay low, move tactically. But there was no time for tactics, no time for caution. The Rangers were surrounded, being slaughtered. Every second she wasted was another life lost. The enemy had them boxed in, closing for the kill. Walsh was out of ammunition, throwing rocks. Chen was unconscious, blood pooling beneath her. Holt had a knife in one hand and an empty pistol in the other. They were going to die, all of them, in 30 seconds, maybe less. Unless someone did something insane. Mia hit them from behind. She fired in controlled bursts, 3 round, 4 round, dropping the nearest fighters, creating chaos. The enemy spun around, confused by the sudden attack from their rear. "Rangers, rally on me," she screamed. The surviving Rangers responded instantly, using the distraction to counterattack. Walsh grabbed a weapon from a fallen enemy. Chen, somehow, incredibly, bleeding from a dozen wounds, staggered to her feet and started firing. It became a close-quarters brawl. Mia used the AK until it ran dry, then switched to her sidearm. then to a knife she'd taken from someone's belt. She fought with everything she had, every bit of training, every ounce of strength. An enemy fighter tackled her. They rolled across the ground, trading blows. Mia got her thumb into his eye socket and he screamed, releasing her. She grabbed a rock and brought it down on his skull. Again. Again. Until he stopped moving. Blood covered her hands, her face, her uniform, some hers, most not. She was operating on pure adrenaline now, on muscle memory, on instinct. The thinking part of her brain had shut down. There was only survival, only killing or being killed. A bullet grazed her shoulder. She spun, fired. The enemy fighter went down. Another came at her with a knife. She blocked, twisted, broke his wrist, used his own blade against him. This wasn't war, this was butchery, and she was good at it. Too good. She'd forgotten how good she was at ending lives. Then suddenly, it was over. The few remaining enemy fighters broke and ran. The battlefield fell silent except for the groans of the wounded and the crackle of burning vehicles. Mia stood in the center of it all, swaying, the AK in her hands, empty, her entire body shaking, not from fear, from something else, something dark that she'd been running from for 2 years. The part of her that was good at this. The part of her that had enjoyed it. Tors. Holt's voice, distant, like he was speaking from underwater. Tors, it's done, stand down. She looked at him, not quite seeing, still in that cold, distant place where she'd been operating, that place where empathy turned off and efficiency turned on, that place where you stopped being human and became something else. Her knees buckled. Holt caught her before she hit the ground. "Medic," he yelled. "I need a medic." As her vision darkened, Mia heard the sound she'd been waiting for. American helicopters. The QRF finally arriving. She'd held long enough, done what needed to be done. And she hated herself for it. Not because she'd killed. She'd made peace with that long ago, but because of how easy it had been, how natural, how much of her had welcomed it. You could pretend to be someone else. You could run for years, but in the end, you were what you were trained to be. And training like that didn't wash off. When do you stop running from the person you used to be? Mia woke in a field hospital 3 days later. White ceiling, antiseptic smell, beeping monitors. Her entire torso was wrapped in bandages. 2 broken ribs, concussion, multiple lacerations, severe dehydration. But she was alive. Captain Holt was sitting in a chair beside her bed. His face was bruised, his left arm in a sling, but he was smiling. "Hey," he said softly, "welcome back." Mia tried to speak. Her throat was raw. "The team. Chen will pull through, lost 3 total." He paused. "But it would have been all of us without you." She closed her eyes. 3 dead, 23 alive. The math of war. The calculations she'd learned to stop making. "Battalion command wants to pin a medal on you," Holt continued. "Silver Star probably, maybe more." "No. Mia. No medals. I'm not military anymore." Holt leaned forward. "You saved 23 lives. You took out 2 helicopters, killed a notorious mercenary, held off a company-sized enemy force practically by yourself. People need to know." "No," her voice was firm. "I don't want recognition. I just want to do my job." "Which job, reporter or soldier?" "Both, neither. I don't know anymore." She looked at her hands, still shaking slightly. There was blood under her fingernails. She'd scrubbed them raw, but it was still there, would always be there. "I spent 2 years running from who I was," she said quietly. "But maybe you can't run from training like that. Maybe it's always there, waiting." Marcus would understand. Mia's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't cried since Kandahar, hadn't let herself. But now, in this hospital bed, with the weight of 11 bodies on her conscience, she couldn't hold it back anymore. "I hesitated and he died," she whispered. "This time I didn't hesitate and 23 people lived. So which version of me is right? Holt reached out, took her hand. The version that makes the hard choices when they need to be made. You're not a murderer, Mia. You're a protector. There's a difference. Was there? She wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe that intent mattered. That purpose made killing something other than murder. But she'd seen the faces of the men she'd shot. Young faces, scared faces, men who probably had families, had dreams, had reasons for being on that ridgeline that made sense to them. And she'd ended them without hesitation, without mercy. Over the next week, rangers from Team 412 visited constantly. They brought her flowers stolen from the base commander's office, contraband candy bars, endless gratitude. Walsh came with a gift, a new camera, top of the line. Figured you need this, he said, since your old one got smashed saving our asses. Jen brought a patch. She'd had the base tailor make it custom. It showed a hawk diving, with 11 stars arranged below it. The guys are calling you Ghost, Chen explained. The 11-shot Ghost. Thought you might want something to remember it by. Mia held the patch, felt the weight of it, not just the fabric but what it represented, who she'd been, who she still was. That night alone in her hospital bed, she took out both patches. The old Falcon 7 insignia, the new Ghost emblem. She laid them side by side on the blanket. Two different versions of the same person. Or maybe not so different after all. She thought about Marcus, about Kandahar, about the 3 seconds of hesitation that had cost him his life. For 2 years she'd believed that hesitation made her weak, made her unsuitable for the work, made her a failure. But maybe Marcus wouldn't have seen it that way. Maybe he would have said that hesitation is what made her human. That questioning whether to take a life is what separated soldiers from murderers. And maybe Dustfall Valley had shown her that you could question and still act. You could doubt and still be decisive. You could hate what you were good at and still do it when people's lives depended on it. The ghost visited her that night. Marcus, not a hallucination, just a memory so vivid it felt real. Him sitting in the chair where Holt had been, smiling that crooked smile. "You did good, Tors," he said. "I killed 11 people. You saved 23. Does that make it okay? Nothing about war is okay, but you did what you had to do. That's all anyone can ask. I didn't hesitate this time. I know. I should feel guilty about that." Marcus's ghost tilted his head. "Do you?" Mia thought about it, really thought. No. Then maybe you've learned the lesson. What lesson? That hesitation and doubt are luxuries, and sometimes you don't get to have luxuries. Sometimes you just have to act and deal with the consequences later. Is that what you would have wanted me to learn? Marcus smiled. I would have wanted you to live, to keep living, to not let one bad day define the rest of your life. He stood, started to fade. I'm proud of you, Mia, I always was. She woke with tears on her face. The hospital was dark, quiet. The only sound was her own breathing and the steady beep of the heart monitor. She was still alive, still here, still carrying the weight of every choice she'd ever made. And maybe that was okay. What does it mean to be whole when you're made of broken pieces? On her discharge day, Holt walked her to the helicopter pad. The sun was setting, the sky painted in shades of red and gold. The desert wind carried the smell of dust and fuel and something else, something that might have been hope. "So what now?" he asked. Mia touched the camera hanging around her neck. New, expensive, a gift from people who thought she'd saved them. Back to journalism, tell the stories that need telling. And if another dustfall happens? She smiled, sad, complicated. Then I'll make the choice Marcus never got to make. I'll do what's necessary. Falcon 7 would be proud. Maybe, or maybe they'd say I should have never stopped being who I was trained to be. The helicopter's rotors began to spin. Mia climbed aboard, settling into the same webbing seat she'd occupied 3 weeks earlier. But she wasn't the same person anymore. You couldn't go through something like Dustfall Valley and remain unchanged. As the Chinook lifted off, she looked down at Firebase Cobra. The Rangers of Team 412 stood in formation, saluting. Mia raised her camera and took a photograph. But instead of looking through the viewfinder, her eyes tracked the horizon, calculating distances, wind speed, angles of fire. Some habits you could never break, some skills you could never forget. And sometimes the person you'd been trying to escape was exactly the person the world needed you to be. The helicopter banked west, toward home, toward whatever came next. In her pack beside her camera equipment, Mia carried both patches, Falcon 7 and the 11-shot Ghost. She'd frame them when she got home, hang them side by side on her wall, not as trophies, but as reminders. Reminders that you could run from your past, but when people's lives hung in the balance, the past would always catch up. Reminders that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about what you did after you broke. Reminders that redemption didn't mean forgetting what you'd done. It meant carrying it with you and choosing to do better anyway. 3 weeks ago, Mia Torres had been a reporter, a civilian, someone trying to escape who she used to be. Now she was something else, something in between, a reporter who could fight, a soldier who could tell stories, a ghost who'd learned to live with her shadows. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, red and gold and eternal. It had witnessed 1,000 battles, would witness 1,000 more. It didn't judge, didn't forgive, just existed, indifferent to the small dramas of small humans trying to survive. Mia closed her eyes, felt the vibration of the helicopter, the weight of her gear, the ache in her ribs. She'd killed 11 people, saved 23. The math didn't balance. Math never did in war. But she was learning to live with unbalanced equations, learning that some questions didn't have answers, some wounds didn't heal, some ghosts never left. And maybe that was okay. Maybe wholeness wasn't about erasing the broken pieces. Maybe it was about accepting them, carrying them, using them to build something new. The helicopter flew on into the gathering dark, and Mia Torres, reporter and sniper, protector and killer, ghost and guardian, flew with it. Not running anymore. Just moving forward. One choice at a time. The radio crackled in her headset, the pilot's voice. ETA 30 minutes, ma'am. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Mia smiled, opened her eyes, looked out at the world rushing past below. Copy that, she said, taking it all in. And she meant it, every word, every moment, every scar. Because this was life, messy and complicated and impossible to categorize. You couldn't be just one thing. You couldn't be just good or just bad, just strong or just broken. You were all of it, all at once. And the only thing that mattered was what you chose to do with that complicated, contradictory truth. Mia had made her choice. She'd stopped running, stopped pretending, stopped trying to be someone she wasn't. She was Falcon 7. She was the 11-shot Ghost. She was a reporter, a warrior, a woman who'd killed and saved and broken and survived. And that was enough. It had to be. The helicopter banked one final time. Ahead, the lights of the airbase glowed against the darkness. Civilization, safety, the illusion of normalcy. Mia touched the patches in her pack, felt their weight, their truth. Then she picked up her camera, checked the lens, adjusted the settings. Ready for whatever came next. Because that's what you did. You kept going, kept trying, kept fighting for something worth believing in. Even when you didn't believe in yourself. Especially then. The wheels touched down, the rotors slowed, the rear ramp lowered. Mia stepped out into the night, into the future, into the unknown. A ghost learning to live again. A warrior learning to rest. A broken woman learning that sometimes the cracks are where the light gets in. She walked forward, camera in one hand, patches in her pack, scars on her soul. Whole in her brokenness. Perfect in her imperfection. Human in all the ways that mattered. And somewhere, maybe, Marcus was smiling. Proud of the woman who'd learned to live with her ghosts. Proud of the soldier who'd found a way to keep fighting, even after the war. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Sometimes strength doesn't roar, it endures. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not picking up the weapon. It's knowing when to put it down and when to pick it back up again. Not for glory, not for pride, but because someone needs you, because lives hang in the balance, because in the end we're all just broken pieces trying to protect each other from the dark. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything.